Welcome, everyone. My name is Mandla Gwetu. I'm academic leader of computer science. It's a privilege for me to host this, our very last Tech Talk of the year. Today, we host a special guest, and that is Standard Bank. Standard Bank has been with us for a very long time, supporting various initiatives within our discipline. For example, programming competitions, and most importantly, they offer a lot of our graduates jobs. So it's a great privilege to have Standard Bank coming to share with us some of their wisdom, some of their insights from the working world, and also to share with you, some of the opportunities that they have on store. So it's a great privilege to welcome Standard Bank. It's also a privilege to welcome our students. Thank you for taking the time out to come and listen to what our industry experts have to share with you. We advise you to take your pens and papers and take notes. Not only are you going to get information about cloud computing, which is one of the leading technologies today that is a game changer in the working world. So it's something you want to have in your portfolio going into interviews as you work your way through your degrees. It's also important for you to note about the different processes that they have in place in terms of recruitment, in terms of interview processes. So we've invited them to come and talk to us about that. And then as well, would like to know, what Standard Bank is all about. I'm always amazed to hear about the different offerings that they have within their company. So it'd be great to hear that from them as well. So welcome, everyone. I encourage you to feel free to ask questions. Towards the end, we will have a Q&A session where you'll be given an opportunity to pose your questions verbally. But as we go along, perhaps a few things will stand out to you and you'd like to present those. There is a chat box that will be monitored. Please feel free to put your questions there and our guests would look out for that. And as and when they can, they would respond to the different questions as they come up. Okay, thank you, everyone. It's important for you to note that this meeting will be recorded and will be shared on the university website, just in case there's people that missed it. Yeah, do note that we are recording, and just feel free to pose your questions adequately, and please respect the values that the university has for the duration of this meeting. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to hand over now to Mabu from Standard Bank.
Thank you, Prof. My name is Mabu Manaileng. I lead the AI engineering efforts at Standard Bank Group, primarily focusing on personalization. And today I prepared like a few slides to take you through our thinking around the strategies that we need to consider when we are contemplating cloud deployments versus on-prem deployments. I will talk about some other things that I felt were necessary. But yeah, I'm looking forward to taking your questions at the end of my presentation. I'm going to kill my video just for the duration of the sharing of my screen. And let's get to it. I'm going to run through this because I don't have enough time, but please just sort of write some notes and then we can talk about this at the Q&A. But I will also be able to take your questions outside this workshop if you have any specific things that you want to ask. But let's get to it. So perhaps before I go to the next slide, so the idea of on-premises solutions and cloud solutions differ in a fundamental way. So on-premises means that you build your own infrastructure. So you build your own data center, and then you have like data people that are maintaining that data center, and you have hardware people, you have networking people. So generally speaking, you can think of what we call an on-premise infrastructure as exactly that, a huge building with a bunch of computers that are meant to handle your compute, your storage, all of those kind of things. But in the cloud, the infrastructure is completely abstracted away from you. So you don't know, you don't care typically, although for governance reasons and other things that we're going to get into, you do want to know, but you have it, the compute is completely abstracted away from you. So the infrastructure is not your problem. You look at it as something you can just provision and you say, I want the VM this, but you don't know about the electric cables that are going to the building where the VM is. You don't know where the data center is. You just know the region sometimes. So the idea of abstracting away the hardware maintenance and management, it's a unique offering that the cloud provides, and which is where the flexibility all comes from. But now we're going to look at some of the pros and cons of taking either approaches. So let's start with on-prem deployments. I will also try to bring this back home by showing you some examples of our previous deployments in Standard Bank, both on-prem and in the cloud. And I think I'm going to try and focus on that because that's, I think, where the learnings can come from. Because most of these things, you can just Google them and read about them. But anyway, the core advantages of doing on-prem deployments is that obviously you have complete control of your infrastructure. Like I said, it's a building that is full of computers, so you are in charge of it. Most people may say that is not an advantage because you don't want complete control of your infrastructure, especially in the cloud era, but you have absolutely that. So you have the security controls are up to you, the encryptions, the everything, it's all under your control, unlike when you are outsourcing that risk to AWS or something where you don't know who is entering the building and who's not, and what infrastructure software and that kind of thing, they tend to dictate that. Then you can comply very nicely from a data security perspective because you can be able to tell a regulator or your security team that this is where the data is being stored. These are the security measures we're taking to ensure that that data is protected, for example. So that gives you the control. It also gives you a very unique opportunity that you don't rely very much on external service providers, because the whole point of cloud computing is it introduces a huge risk of third party. Third party risk is a big thing where if the Microsoft data center goes offline, you as their customer, you are impacted, and even if it's not your fault or anything. And because it's multi-tenancy, one tenant can break the whole infrastructure and then it affects you. So having your own on-prem deployments allow you to be in control of that, because then you can control who has access to what and blah, blah, blah. And then there's no multi-tenancy as you would find it in the cloud. Some of the, obviously, the disadvantages, as I'm just saying, you can pick it up, is that the first thing is that if you're going to have this infrastructure and this huge building full of computers, that means you're spending a lot of money. Typically, this is what we call CAPEX. So that's capital expenditure. You need to invest in building the building to begin with. You need to invest in buying the hardware. So we're talking about millions, multi-millions of rands to do that. Unlike in the cloud, where in the context of serverless, you can just provision a resource and use it, and then kill it when you don't want it, saving you a lot of money. There's actually, it's near zero capital expenditure in the cloud because there's no infrastructure upfront that needs to be provisioned. You only provision what you want when you want it. The situations can be different depending on your deployments. And then on-prem infrastructures are not usually very scalable because, like, you can imagine what scalability sounds like. Scalability means you need to buy a server, you need to do this, you need to, if you want to scale, you buy a new server. If you if your data center is full of servers, now you have to build a new building. So that's not scalable. But in the cloud, you would never care about that. Amazon or Microsoft, they're the ones who worry about that. They are building as many data centers in as many regions as possible, and then you just have to provision the resources. And obviously, when you have a building full of computers, then you have a maintenance and management overhead. So you have to make sure that, especially in South Africa, where we have load shedding, you need to have like generators so that the computers are always running. So there is a bunch of other things now that come as a disadvantage of you trying to own your own, manage your own infrastructure. This is a typical infrastructure stack that we usually deploy in Standard Bank. So we have a bunch of mobile app features that are running off of a stack like this. So what happens here is that you have an on-premise SQL stack that we call the reservoir. The reservoir is a giant SQL Server cluster with thousands of nodes and terabytes of storage and RAM. So it's a SQL a cluster that is being maintained on-prem, and then you have a Hadoop stack. Hadoop stack that is running in Cloudera software. So that is a parallel computing cluster, and then this is running mostly PySpark. And so I call this big data analytics because, so for example, on one of our features on the mobile app called Budget Manager, we are tracking the income and expenses of customers so that we can predict the budget for them. But the income and expense tables are about 15 terabytes of information. So just querying the table, you could like sort of be looking at like some 15 billion rows of data. So that's huge, right? And even like a giant SQL cluster is not enough to handle something like that. So that's why you have to go to parallel computing infrastructures like Hadoop and Cloudera. So the Hadoop is managed by us. It's on our own servers. We deployed it on-prem, and we are running PySpark to do all the analytics. As you can see, everything we do on our mobile app features that are running on our Hadoop stack, we're using PySpark. So from data validation, pre-processing, training of models, inference with those models, because once you train a model, you need to do inference on it. And then once we do inference, we typically write it to a Postgres database, which is also an on-prem Postgres cluster. I mean, we're trying to manage money by using Postgres because it's open source, then we don't have to pay that much, but you're still having to, pay for the infrastructure. And then now you have like some microservices that are written in Spring Boot and Java that are consuming the Postgres API data to render it to the customers. So this is a typical stack that is on-prem that most of our workloads, especially mobile app-facing stuff, will be going through at Standard Bank. It's something we're trying to migrate off of because obviously, yeah, we want to, I mean, if just for example, our PySpark version is still like 2.3, but then out there is already PySpark 3.4. So to upgrade the cluster is a nightmare. You can break everything that is running in production. So we avoid upgrading the cluster because we want to break things. But now we lose the flexibility of using the latest Spark version and the latest technologies because of the idea of doing an on-prem structured stack that you are managing yourself. Which is why people want to go to the cloud, right? So one of the reasons cloud makes sense is that obviously you are flexible. You can get whatever version of Spark you want. You can get whatever version of Hadoop even you want. I mean, in AWS, for example, they have something called Elastic MapReduce, which gives you a serverless Hadoop infrastructure. Right. So instead of doing this on the cloud, on-prem, and then like not versioning correctly, and then using old versions of Spark and that kind of thing, you go to the cloud, and then you get all those flexibility and the scalability. So the scalability is more like this. Or if you're on-prem and then you're trying to do Hadoop stuff, if you're on-prem and you're doing Hadoop stuff, when you run out of, let's say you're running out of memory because the Hadoop nodes are running at full capacity, your job fails. But in AWS or in the cloud in general, it won't fail. It will just provision an additional node and then say that this is what we call horizontal and vertical scaling. It's very difficult to do that on-prem. Actually, it's almost impossible. But in the cloud is designed specifically for that, for horizontal and vertical scaling, so that you can just add additional nodes when you need them. And this works for anything. Even when you are running a Lambda function or something, it will always just provision an extra node if it feels like you're running over capacity. But doing that on-prem is infeasible. And obviously, in the cloud, we reduce the CapEx costs. The reason I say most of the times here is that there is a caveat about cloud and costs. So the thing is, the costs can be managed, which is what the cloud is designed for, but the costs can get out of control very quickly. And also there is like some stupid mistakes that maybe a data scientist can make and then forget a node running or an EC2 instant running, and then tomorrow you wake up with like a $10,000 bill. So there's a lot of risk of escalated costs in the cloud, especially if you don't have the skills and the experience, which is something I'm gonna try to get to in this conversation. And the main disadvantage of cloud is also ongoing operational costs. So there's nothing free in the cloud. So when you're on-prem, you can build a Hadoop cluster and then say, I pay 25 million for the next 2 years. In the cloud, there's no such a thing. So what happens is that whenever the resources are running, they're costing you. The cloud providers are coming up with like creative costing strategies where you can do these things called reserved instances, where you say, I'm going to reserve the following capacity for the next 12 months, and then they give you 40% discount or something. But basically, there is ongoing operational cost in the cloud that is unavoidable in most cases. And it's very difficult to comply with data security and compliance because people are asking, where is the data being stored? You know, most of the regions are not supported in most cloud providers. Google doesn't have a data center in Africa, anywhere in Africa. Amazon has a data center in Cape Town, and then Microsoft has a data center in Joburg and Cape Town as well. And at least you can use those, especially because the regulator doesn't want things like cross-border data transfers and then you taking data to Ireland or taking data to America where they don't comply with GDPR, for example. So there's like sort of regulatory issues that makes it very difficult to work with the cloud. And we don't want to be vendor locked in. So we don't want to be a Microsoft customer and then everything we do is in Microsoft, because sometimes Amazon makes sense. So for example, if you want to deploy a mobile app stack, you probably want to go to AWS. But if you want to deploy some other big data analytics stacks, like you can use like things like Azure Synapse and stuff. So the disadvantage of choosing a one vendor in the cloud could be that you get locked in and then you're only at their mercy. This is an example of a complicated deployment that we did in AWS. So this is all cloud native. There's nothing on-prem, there's nothing anywhere. It's all in the cloud. And as you can see, this is one of the disadvantages of the cloud as well, much as it's an advantage, is that you can see that this is like Lego blocks, right? They give you the Lego blocks and then you build the shape that you want. But it doesn't just come built in. It doesn't just come as a suite of products that you can just put data in here and get predictions out of the other end. It almost never works that way. You need to put things together. So as you can see here, we have this call center operation service called Amazon Connect that is recording calls. We take the recorded calls and then we process them in the data wrangler pipeline in SageMaker. And then we have some Lambda functions that are doing some triggers so that the pipeline can run in real time when we want it and in batch when we want it. But the point is that this is complicated. It's not very many people who can put together this architecture and actually develop it and build it and deploy it to production. It's very intensive. It requires people to know a lot of things that happens about that cloud structure. But this allows you to have a complete serverless end-to-end pipeline that can do call center analytics at scale. At scale, like you can process like 100 million calls with this kind of architecture with a serverless infrastructure, and all thanks to the cloud, because I wouldn't be able to do something like this on-prem. Also, cloud is important for this thing we call AI engineering. So the problem is that when we do machine learning at scale at a company like Standard Bank Group, which is very huge, what we find is that machine learning code, the code that you write that actually is the machine learning model, is less than 1% of the entire end-to-end stack for the machine learning model to work. So you have like configurations, data collection, saving infrastructure like inference. You have analysis tools. There is a lot of things that needs to come into play for your architecture to work, where the machine learning code is only 1% of all of it. So in the cloud, you get the flexibility to be able to cover all of that, whereas on-prem, it's a very, very painful process, which is why we prefer cloud when we start saying we're scaling our AI capabilities to an engineering level. There is other things that we call hybrid deployments. Hybrid deployments allow you to combine your on-prem and your cloud infrastructure. So for example, you may find that you can't process data in the cloud, but you can process it on-prem and anonymize it, then take the anonymous data to the cloud. We are seeing that, especially when people are involved in what we call cloud migrations, they gradually enter into a hybrid mode until they are either a full cloud. So you start full on-prem, then you become hybrid, and then you become full cloud. And for a good reason, because you can't cloud migration is not something you can just do tomorrow and then you're done. You have to comply with things, you have to do these things, you have to take it step by step. So as and when you're doing it step by step, you enter a hybrid mode where you're combining on-prem and cloud infrastructure. This can be dangerous because it can introduce like duplication of costs, where now you're paying for cloud and you're also paying for on-prem. So you generally don't want to be in hybrid mode for a long time because you want to pay for either the cloud or on-prem, because on-prem is still not free as well. This is an example of an architecture that we deployed in Standard Bank that is following the hybrid infrastructure model. So the blue things here, the Hive tables, the raw sources here, this is a card processing system. This is the reservoir. All of these things are hosting customer data. So at the time, we did not have the regulatory approval to take the customer data to the cloud. So for that reason, we process the customer data on-prem, we anonymize the data, then we use AWS Data Sync to migrate the anonymized data. Then we start using SageMaker to do fancy things with Elastic MapReduce, and then we typically sort of persist our inference output into a very performant serverless Postgres infrastructure in AWS, and then our microservices consume that with like Lambda functions that are running Spring Boot applications in Java and that kind of thing. So the architecture looks simple, but obviously it's complicated. But this is where hybrid deployments can come handy, so that you can be able to do some cloud work while you are still not very allowed to just migrate your whole data set to the cloud, which is very common. And then there is this concept of multi-cloud strategies. So in Standard Bank, we are a multi-cloud company. So we have our primary cloud provider as AWS, and then our secondary cloud provider as Azure. This is actually a regulatory requirement for banking. So the South African Reserve Bank does not allow banks to have only one cloud partner if you want to do cloud workloads. You have to have two, so that you have backup and all of that thing. This has its own perks, right? So because you can pick and choose what you want to do. So it's like, if you can't find this in AWS, you can do it in Azure. If you can't find it in Azure, you can do it in AWS. Or if you don't like the treatment of it in AWS, you can do it in Azure. If you don't like the treatment, you can do it in the opposite. So for example, one of the advantages competitive here. So we found when we wanted to deploy GPT in the bank that we can't deploy it in AWS because, I mean, we all know everybody was sleeping until OpenAI came up with GPT. And then when GPT came, everybody was running to catch up. Even Google was running to catch up, even though Google is the one that developed the transformer model that is powering OpenAI's GPT. But GPT was there, and now we want to use it, but cloud providers don't have it. I mean, people are playing catch up. Google is catching up now. Amazon is partnering with open source models and that kind of thing. But this can give you a competitive advantage when you have a multi-cloud strategy, where you can say, oh, this primary cloud provider does not have this, I'm going to go to secondary. And then you very quickly are able to deploy to add your own competitive advantage in the market. Obviously, the problem here is that now you start having problems where you have to transfer data from AWS to Azure or from Azure to AWS. And that is very, very expensive. Cloud providers don't want you to take data out of their platform. It's what we call ingress cost. It's very, very expensive. You moving data out of AWS is a problem. Moving it in is not an issue. They don't charge you for moving it in, but moving it out is a problem. So when you have a multi-cloud strategy, moving data in between the two clouds can be very costly. And obviously, now you need to have cloud engineers who know AWS as much as they know Azure, which can become a skills overhead as well. This is a typical architecture of us trying to deploy a hybrid multi-cloud strategy. This is very problematic. So for example, because the reservoir is a SQL stack, like I said, it's a very giant SQL cluster. It's very easy to migrate it into Azure. So to a big data analytics platform called Azure Synapse in the Azure cloud. But the Hive tables are on a Hadoop stack. So you don't necessarily want to be taking that Hadoop cluster to Azure. You don't have to, you can take it anywhere. So in our case, we say, okay, let's take Hadoop to AWS. Let's take the reservoir to Synapse. And then let's take the Synapse data into AWS so that we can be able to aggregate data and combine a bunch of data sets. But you see, this is complicated now. Now we're moving data from Azure to AWS, which is a problem. Azure doesn't want us to do that. It costs us a lot of money. Also, now you have two platforms to maintain. You have to maintain the Azure platform. You have to maintain the AWS platform. Sometimes, very often times, you don't want to do this, but there are times where you don't have a choice. You have to do this. And I've learned in my experience in Standard Bank with moving data to the cloud and building cloud workloads is that Sometimes there is very little thinking that is applied when you come up with a hybrid strategy. Because, for example, you can say the following data will sit in AWS, the following data will sit in Azure, but then now you want to deploy an Azure service that needs the data that is in AWS, which forces you to sort of just welcome the costs of it. And then sometimes the costs are completely unmanageable. So this is what a typical, what I call a hybrid multi-cloud deployment stack would look like with all its complexities. It's still useful, but it's a problem. With the few minutes that am I out of time, or can I do like what, 2 minutes? 5 minutes? How much time do I still have? Anyone?
Mabu, you can go for 2 minutes.
Cool. So I want to talk about the cloud skills gap that we have. And hopefully I can encourage you as students to just start thinking about how to brand yourself and skill yourself so that you can match the skills demand that we have in the industry. One of the things, and Prof, I'll criticize you for a bit here, but you know, as universities, you don't prepare students about like with cloud computing and skill them up to say, how do you do cloud deployments? And I know that that is not the point, that the classroom must deliver that skills, but the students need to learn how to get out of the classroom and get their hands dirty, so that when by the time we're trying to hire them, I can be able to have a meaningful starter conversation with them about what cloud is and what this is. So if you look at an AI development lifecycle, the AI infrastructure is what usually cloud helps us with. Everything else here anybody can do, but the AI infrastructure is what cloud helps us with. So as a student on a weekend or something, log into AWS, use their free credits, and then build an EMR cluster, understand how it works. Because when you don't, now the skills that you require for us to do cloud deployments, which is very common now because most of our deployments are in the cloud, you don't have. You know, you can do data engineering, you can do modeling, but you literally have no idea how to spin up a cluster or how to spin up EC2 instance in AWS, or just set up a SageMaker pipeline. That is very important. I'm just going to skip this and I'm going to look at this. Most of you, I'm sure they are aspiring to be data scientists. So the data scientist in the classroom or at university is not being taught to leverage cloud in any way. They're being taught how to do data science, how, not what to do. So I would encourage you to say, think about how you can prepare yourself to get privy to how cloud workloads work. And like I said, you don't have to wait for the professor in the classroom. They're never going to get there. It's not designed that way. You need to, you know, get out of the classroom, go to Azure and get free credits, go to AWS and get free credits, and then build, you know, do a project and then use Azure for some deployment. Build a website, you know, build an app or something, just so that you can get yourself skilled up there. Because in the classroom, they're teaching you mathematics, they're teaching you machine learning, but then for math and machine learning to work, we want you to be cloud proficient when you come to work for us in the industry. I hope this sort of paints a picture of what our thinking is and what's going on with the cloud and on-prem. And I'm sorry for having rushed through this because we didn't have enough time, but thank you. And I think, Vanessa, it will be your turn now to take them through your problem.
Thank you so much, Mabu. That was very insightful. Even I learn every day when I listen to you. Just to let you all know that Mabu is one of our purple unicorns that we have at Standard Bank. So very learned. I am going to quickly share my deck and I'm going to get stuck into the presentation because I am aware that we have time constraints. So my name is Vanessa Orge, and I am with Standard Bank in the youth development and employment space. I just want to make sure my camera is on, Mabu.
Yes, your camera is on.
Fantastic. All right, lovely. Right, so what I'm going to do today is I'm with the Youth Development and Employment team, and certainly a very exciting area of the bank, I think, because it is imperative that we think about, you know, the future capabilities, one of which is, which we need is computer science to grow those now and future skills. We need to be mindful of the fact that whatever it is that you're studying, and I know in this case it's a computer science class that we're looking at, you need to understand, you know, what opportunities there are there from a youth development and employment perspective, specifically because you need to start thinking about your future as a young professional. So what I want to do is take you through some of the youth offerings we have. I want to pause slightly on the data science program, but I would need to do a whistle-stop tour because we are pressed for time. So very excited to be here, and I'm going to officially start. Right, so at Standard Bank, our youth offerings that we have span across your graduate programs, internships, and learnerships. Now, when you're looking at your STEM disciplines specifically, that's your science, technology, engineering, and maths, those are the scarce skills that we require. And I think when we're looking at the state of maths in South Africa and how we rank, comparatively to the rest of the world, it's certainly, we're in a dire situation because the throughput rates from your early childhood development to your high school to your university is, the pool is growing smaller and there's a declining number. Now, if we want to remain competitive as a country, we would need to ensure that we bring up that state of maths to give graduates like yourselves more opportunities to get into the critical skills market, which is a market that's much needed across the different industry sectors that we have in South Africa and globally for that matter. So when we look at our grad programs, learnerships and internships, it forms a strategic pillar for Standard Bank. The reason being is you get people that are working for the bank, and some of us have been there for a long time. So what happens is, in order for us to remain relevant, in order for us to make sure that we are cutting edge in the in the skills market or the skills economy, we need to bring in new blood into the organization, simply because graduates, interns, and learners have the ability to be untainted by institutionalized thinking, and you're bringing fresh ideas. You challenge the status quo of how we look at our business. And in this case, we need to remember everything that we do centers around the customer, centers around customer experience, and what Mabu spoke to. It impacts customer experience hugely. So when we're solutioning, everything that we solution, the customer is pivotal, from all angles. And when we solution, we need to have the voice of the customer in our ear and head and hearts, and come up with solutioning that is relevant and not anticipate and think what our customers want. We have to know what it is that they want. So with the graduate programs, you're hired permanently into Standard Bank. And the graduate programs currently, I'm overseeing what we call personal and private banking and your business and commercial banking. And then we also have your corporate and investment banking. Across there, we're sitting with the technology stack of graduate programs as well. So on the graduate programs, I know money is on top of your mind. So I want to say quite openly that Standard Bank features, in the top 5 or top 3 percentile of competitive salaries in the marketplace. But I also want you to err on caution, and don't let just money be the driving factor, because you have to think about it from a career perspective. You are in a scarce skills market, so the money comes. All right. So with the graduate programs, we look at minimum requirements. I'm not going to go into that, in depth, but I think that the perception or the mismatched perception that comes is organizations only hire people that are hitting straight A's. On the contrary, there are multiple factors that we consider when it comes to graduate programs, internships, and learnerships. We look at what is, we call it EQ, your emotional intelligence, your emotional quotient. We look at what is your work style. We look at how you respond to us in interviews when it comes to behavioral competencies, because it's imperative for us to hire the right grads for the right roles for the right programs at Standard Bank. All right. And with our graduate programs, you're hired in a permanent capacity. You are paid very competitive salaries, on the permanent side as well. And what we do is we look at the businesses. So our heads of business, we look at what their strategy is for the next few years, and then we decide these capabilities are an absolute imperative, and we build the capabilities according to what the business need is. Now, so my portfolio, it's very interesting. I call it a fruitcake, and Ehren would be able to relate to this, and Mabu as well, because when I look at the pipelines, it's going to span from graduates that are studying your business science and your commercial aspects, because that's going to fall more into your private banking, where we groom what we call relationship bankers for our coverage side. And then it goes completely on the extreme, where we're looking at programs like your data science. We're looking at programs like your behavioral economics, where we look at psychology, and we look at students that are studying economics. So, and those are new capabilities. Data science is, I think, over the last 3 years, the universities have caught wind with the steer from industry, because what we were saying to the universities is that you need to start also evolving your curricula to inculcate the scarce skills that we're wanting in industry. And what we're finding that's lacking is the ability of practical application, because you're coming with the very theoretical knowledge for all 3 offerings that you see on the screen, but the practical application is lacking. Now, with our graduate programs, internships, and learnerships, what we do is we have bespoke programs. So if, for instance, Mabu comes and says to me, Vanessa, we're building out the data science capability for personalization, VAF, and some of our coverage areas, those heads of business would say, give us the numbers in terms of what they're looking for. Mabu would then say to me, Vanessa, we're looking for 15 data science grads. These are the minimum requirements. These are the specific qualifications we're looking at. And that's where we then, go into action. We get to the universities, we do sessions like this, guest lectures, and we start creating that awareness. So you need to start thinking about what it is that you, what is your interest firstly, and you need to start understanding that if you're studying math stats, I'm going to touch on data science a little more just now. If you're studying math stats and you computer science or business science for that matter, you need to understand where you can play, because it's not a natural, I'm going to say, you can't have blinker mentality and think, oh, because I studied math stats, I have to go into a career that's purely math stats. Right? Gone are those days. When we hire for your ability to solution. So it's your problem-solving mind that we're looking at. And we've tested this model because we put in, the one time we were assessing, we had engineers in the room, we had industrial psych and psychology students, and then we had our UX students. And, the UX understood, like the process. The engineers brought down they optimized the process. So for instance, if you're looking at an ATM machine, and I know you don't because you tap and go wherever you go, but if you're looking at ATM machines, what happened with having that diversity of skill is the engineers brought down an 8-step process down to like a 3-step process. All right. And by doing that, we were finding that, there was lots of fraud happening because people were forgetting their cards, for instance, at the ATMs. And then our fraud stats went up significantly. And they just tweaked the process and said, instead of you getting your money first, let the card come out first from the ATM. And that automatically will, as a user, pull, and we will put it into our wallet, and then we would take our money. The psychology students brought in the behavioral science element, and they started understanding the psyche of the customer segment that they were using as focus groups. Okay. And then obviously your UX graduates brought their skill. So when you have that diversity of skill, your solutioning is absolutely amplified for the customer. And that we're in the business of journeying with our customers at every single important life stage of your lives, for that matter, if you're banking with us. So, and the graduate programs therefore goes from coverage into the scarce skills area, and we build on capability. The programs all start on the 1st of Feb the following year. And, we hit off with a massive high impact induction. It's a global induction because we say Africa is our home, we drive her growth. So when we talk about growth, we need it for it to be cross-border, and we want to grow Africa, not just South Africa. So there's massive opportunities there. You would need to apply, and I'll give you the dates later. Your internships and learnerships, your learnerships firstly is, when you joined on a fixed term contract for learnerships and internships. It spans from 18 months to 24 months. It's, so you're not hired permanently. But just say you don't get into a graduate program, there's ample opportunity for you to get into one of our learnerships, get your foot in the door, shoot the lights out while you're doing your learnerships and internships. And automatically, a program manager like me and my peers would then notice that you are putting in the effort, you're showing potential, you're adding value to business, and you're serious about what you're doing. And that then acts as a feeder pipeline to our graduate programs. And I would say to people like an Ehren and a Mabu, I've got Zolani, and Zolani has been exceptional in her rotations, on the learnership internships. And I think, please just, take some time to interview her in your recruitment process for grad program, and we have conversions from there. You then get businesses that would look at people on learnerships and internships, and we call them direct hires. They might have entry-level roles, and they hire off these two pipelines. So it's absolutely imperative. We're looking at a cradle to grave where our hiring stats, go right across from learnerships, internships into grad programs. So that's the thinking we have, because you need to remember the unemployment rate is high. We get 67,000 plus applications a year, and we have to also solution and be socially responsible citizens at the end of the day, and say, how do we equip the grads? When I say grads are across the three offerings. How do we equip the grads that we can't take on? So if we take on 400, you work out the maths, right? And how many haven't got jobs? Then we're also equipping you with skills during this work exposure across learnerships and internships for you to acquire employment with other prospective employers. So it's just been socially responsible, and we're very serious about that as well. To underpin everything, we're looking at the context of South Africa, or Africa is very different to the rest of the world. And in South Africa, I'm going to bring it home because of our history. We're finding that, we have people coming from very disadvantaged backgrounds. So we filter in solutioning for them. And then you have people that are not that disadvantaged or come from very affluent backgrounds. When we're looking at bursaries, we factor all that in. And we come up with the magic quotient of having, financially bursaries for financially needy students. We have merit bursaries for those students that are shooting the lights out academically, and we just, we play with those numbers. Bursaries are given from second year because the attrition rate's quite high from first to second year. Those applications open around July and it closes on 30 September. I'll tell you where you can get that at the end of the presentation. And we give full bursaries. You also get medical aid. You have access to ICAS, where, if you need any counseling or anything for that matter, you are supported throughout that journey. And I think, when you're looking at these three offerings, there's magic in here, but it's up to you to actually take the time and, don't just apply to Standard Bank. We want to be the first, but you need to cast your net wide as graduates as well. So these three offerings are generally across most of the private sector and public sector for that matter. So you need to do your homework, look at the website, make sure, all the boxes are ticked in terms of the meticulous CV that we're looking for. Because I said the numbers, 67,000, how do you actually use your unique identifier to stand out when our talent acquisition specialists are going through all those applications? And it's in the, your motivation letter, it's in you actually tailoring what the job that you're applying for that needs to come out in your motivation. You need to show us that you understand the program that you're applying for, and that would require you to be in sync with what's happening in the market, in sync with what's happening on a micro and macro level, tying back to the program. Do that, because what it triggers is rich conversation when you come for an interview. And when you're sitting in front of Mabu or Ehren and his panel and myself, you're automatically differentiating yourself, and we'll want you. I'm going to pause there. There's lots I can go into, and maybe Prof, we can do a separate work readiness program, just to prepare you better. All right, so those are all the program offerings we have. I think we have in excess of 60 across all the programs. So please, I appeal to you to actually apply. Our applications are going to be opening, I'll tell you, later. But let me tell you now, so it's going to open around the 1st of April next year. And it's going to be closing around the 30th of June. The internships and learnerships, there's intermittent phases that we have where business would come to us in the year, and we might have 2 or 3 intakes a year. So you need to keep your eyes peeled on the Standard Bank Careers website, the grad programs, internships, learnerships. You put your alerts on there, and take the time to actually be serious about your job hunting, in other words, okay? And make sure that you start understanding the culture, you understand what's happening economically, because that's important. It creeps into conversations, and understand the impact of how our economy is impacting the banking sector, to bring it home and broadly, right? So I spoke about the data science program, certainly a flagship program together with our behavioral economics grad program. Now, when you look at a data scientist, this program is built out and it's intense. The cost, I'm going to give you an idea of the cost to make you realize the intensity of how serious we are about building this capability for our Standard Bank group. We're spending in excess of 256,000 just for the technical training and for the soft skills. Because what we're finding is when you're looking at the interplay, we are looking for people that are studying business science, computer science, maths, and stats. Now, you would say we need the business savvy, we need the tech geek, and we need the maths magician. Now, when you look at those intersecting bubbles, you can see the yellow or gold triangle. That's where we want our data scientists to play. And yes, we said it might be purple or rainbow unicorns, but I think the universities are coming, are playing up their curricula to be more encompassing of the skill. And we, as Standard Bank, we're leading in this field, by the way, in terms of graduates, internships, and learnerships. We give you the work exposure. So if you're sitting more in the business science, you would have a lot of heaviness on the maths magician side and the tech geek. So we try and be all encompassing so we can reach that gold, center that we have. Now, when you look at, what's understated, I think, time and time again, is your ability to storytell. Because Mabu and Ehren would also tell you, if you can't storytell, whether you're trying to put a strat in place and you want to do a proposal to your exec or leadership committee, or even your own team, you would have to have the ability of storytelling. Okay, it's a powerful, and I call it a scarce skill. You might you might disagree with me, but I think it's a scarce skill. You have to be able to storytell to get anything over the line, whether you're a grad or whether you are Simsha Balala, who's our group CE. All right, that skill is imperative. Everything that we do, has to have purpose. We have to understand the real problem of customers, and we have to bring that in storytelling to get anything over the line. So that's what it looks like, and that's what we're working towards our data science program. You get to present to CEs from across Africa during the program. You would also have an induction. You have specific data science program, and it's intense. It's a very intense program. And while you're doing the program, you get capstone projects. You rotate through the business areas that put in demand for a data science grad, and you get that work exposure. As the program is tapering off to the end, we ask you, if you rotated through 2 or 3 areas, we ask you, which are your top 3, do it in pecking order and give it to us. We speak to the business, they give us their pecking order in terms of the grads that they wanted or were suitable for their area. We find a match, and then you roll off the program because you're permanent in all our grad programs, and you go roll into that particular business unit. It's a magic program, definitely best in market, best in class. So I urge you to apply for that next year. And you also got your credit risk areas, you got your corporate and investment banking, areas, you got technology that also looks at your skill as well. And there's multiple programs, okay? Application dates, as I said, 1st April to 30 June. You need to get onto the Standard Bank website and just be very, very, very deliberate about how you're looking for jobs and what you're putting out there from your personal brand. You need to remember, I just want to stop that and get back into the room. And you also need to remember that, it's your brand. and you absent when we're getting those 67,000 applications. So your CV speaks for you in your absence. And if you do a bloody good job of your CV, there's a reward in that because we would notice your application. So that's what I have time for. And I'm going to pause there. Sorry, Ehren, I took time. And I'm going to hand over to Ehren, who's our head of acquisition. And he's one of my business stakeholders, just like Mabu. Ehren, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Vanessa. Alrighty, I'm just going to share my screen as well. All right, good afternoon, everybody. As Vanessa mentioned, my name is Ehren Steenkamp, and I'm the head of acquisitions for Standard Bank South Africa Young Professionals specifically. So when we talk about young professionals and acquisitions, we talk about the actual banking account and facility that you'll need as a young professional going in to the industry next year once you start working. So I'm going to also just switch off my camera, and then I'll take you through the proposal and ring back to the room once completed. Thank you. All right, so before I get started, I just need to mention that Standard Bank is an authorized financial services provider, and that at Standard Bank, all our bankers are salaried employees, and that we are mandated to render financial services in long-term and short-term deposits, as well as long-term and short-term personal lines insurance. Standard Bank is also covered from an indemnity insurance responsibility. So in the event of any loss, we are responsible to assist you at any point in time once you become a client of ours. All right, so when we talk about Standard Bank professional banking, we speak about a facility that is tailor-made for you as a young professional. Why Standard Bank? It's simple. We say that you're a young professional and we see you. So as you enter into this big, bad, exorbitant, hectic working market, you get two private bankers that assist you with your day-to-day banking needs. And almost what we would try and position this as is that it is a branchless type of position. So if you think about Standard Bank, we are the biggest bank on the African continent. And ultimately what that means is that we've got two legs when it comes to banking. We've got a main market leg and a private leg. The main market leg is our branch-led business, and the private banking leg is sort of our digital interface, where when you become a private client, it's a bit more branchless and your bankers bring banking to you and not the other way around. All right, just a quick glance at what the bankers will assist you with going forward. So when you think about debt, you think about good debt, you think about bad debt. And I love to make the example. The moment you start your new working career, at any point in time, I believe it's always so imperative that your brand stands out, as Vanessa mentioned earlier. And part of your brand is looking good when you show up for work. Generally, what happens when you get your first employment contract, you head up straight to the first store that you can see at the mall, and you take out a credit facility. And the worst part about taking out a facility at a store is that there is no security backing that facility. And I'll give you an example. If you were to go to the store and you decided to buy underwear, as an example, and you bought 1,000 rands underwear, at the time when you get to the pay point, and when you get to the pay point, you need to make a pivotal decision in your life. Do I use my own money to pay for this, or do I use the store credit facility that has just been granted to me? Always the better part is to use the store facility in your mind, because you don't feel the money going off your account in that specific moment in time. What then happens is when you swipe that store card every single month, they send you a invoice. The invoice will give you a minimum amount due that you need to pay for this specific underwear that you took. And in the event of liability and you lose your job, by way of an example, there is no security for them to come and recollect that underwear. So ultimately what then happens is that they hand you over, and in order for them to mitigate the risk in the event that you cannot pay for this facility, they up the interest rates quite hectically. So part and parcel of what we assist with is a credit facility at an interest rate of prime less 0.25. I wish I had the luxury of time to explain the prime lending rate today, But if you were to open an account with Standard Bank, the banker will take you through the entire proposition. We've also got vehicle financing at prime -1, so quite a good lending rate in the market and very competitive in the market as well. And when we talk about home loans, we also assist with up to 105% in terms of your bond. What that means is any additional costs that come with you purchasing your first home will be covered and created to build back into the facility. An example, if the bond was 1 million rand, we would give you up to 1,150,000, and the additional 50,000 is to cover any costs that come with you taking out the bond with Standard Bank. All right, then just the account at the glance. As I've mentioned earlier, you get 2 bankers, you get a credit facility on receipt of your signed employment contract, you get some nice black cards, the real black cards that open doors for you even at the airport lounges when traveling. You get preferential rates on both your home, car, and credit card when taking these facilities up with Standard Bank. Also up to 20% discount on Emirates flight, free wealth planning and insurance on your wills, and then all of this comes in at a fee of 250 Rand per month. Of course, you are a final year student, so we don't expect you to pay for any of this now. So we do waive the fee from now for the next 6 months if you were to open the account. And lastly, it's just also another sort of brochure you can glance through if needed. And then we've got a little surprise for everybody on the call today. So in the event you are looking to bank with Standard Bank, the banker will put on his camera very shortly that you can reach out to, and we will provide you with up to 5,000 Rand in cash in your account once the account is opened. The banker will take you through all of that. And this 5,000 Rand is for you to go out and get that beautiful suit, get that beautiful whatever it is required for your new job so that you can look good as you enter into the working industry. Without any further ado, I think I'm also out of time. The banker details are noted on the screen over here. So it's Ashvir Chalita, and he will put on his camera shortly just to introduce himself. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Just quickly, thanks, Ehren. Thanks for covering that. Quick introduction from my end. I am one of the professional bankers based in KZN. I do actually see a few familiar names here. That's good to see. I've engaged with a few of you already. But yeah, guys, if you are interested in our professional banking offering, you have my details here. We'll put it in the chat as well. So please do feel free to reach out to me and I'll take you through our offer matrix. Thank you so much, guys.
Wow.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. That is quite a tech talk and quite an offering for our students. I hope you guys are taking notes. 5,000 Rand is a lot of money, especially if it's coming for free. So well done, Standard Bank, and thank you for being proactive and for coming to speak to our students. A lot of gems coming through there. I'd like to say thank you to Mabu and to Vanessa, for outstanding advice to our students. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, and I think it was worth it because of the quality of the feedback that we got from Standard Bank. So I will just maybe give opportunity to our guests in terms of any outstanding chat questions that were posted there, if you would like to respond to those. But otherwise, we have seen that there's an email that's been popped up there in case you'd like to get any other questions clarified. But just to say, from UKZN's perspective, we value the feedback that we get, particularly what Mabu said. If you can send that message back to him that we are listening, and in fact, part of our curriculum in the honors section does now cover cloud computing. We've got a partnership with AWS. We're working on a partnership with Microsoft as well. So we look forward to a continued engagement and relationship with you. And Vanessa, your proposal for a work readiness program, that is noted, and we look forward to inviting you guys back. So I'll just hand over to anybody from Standard Bank if you'd like to say a few last words before we wrap it up. Any outstanding questions that you may want to address?
Sorry, Doc, just one thing that I've forgotten is, so just to give you an idea, I know I said a lot in a very short span of time. We have what you call the virtual internships, and there it gives you good insight to get context of what a data scientist is, also allude to what Mabu has covered in his session today. So just Google Standard Bank virtual internships. There's a whole host of internships. You also get a certification at the end for your CV, and you also would be able to do it at your own pace. And it's just 4 to 6 hours, and you decide how you allocate those hours. Our work readiness program is there. It's impeccable. So use it, start orientating yourself to that as well. It really is going to help you. So I just wanted to add that, and it's been absolutely fantastic. Just engaging. Prof, thank you as well for having us. And, we had I think it was a fun time, lots of information, but we will see you in person again next year. Thank you.
Awesome. So look forward to that. Well, all that's left for me is to say a very big thank you to Standard Bank. Thank you for coming to engage with us, and thank you for continuing to offer our students lots of opportunities. We've heard about the learnerships, we've heard about the graduate program, we've heard about interns, and we've also heard about bursaries. So a very big thank you, and also for letting us know what you guys require. You've noted that there's practical application that's lacking. I'm also taking notes, and we're going back to this drawing board to make sure that you as our clients are satisfied. To our students, thank you for coming through. We hope that you feel that you've chosen UKZN as a good place in terms of us looking out for you, looking out for what's best for you, and we will continue trying to improve. Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon, and take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.